Off with Charles Moran. Charles Moran is national spokesperson for Log Cabin Republicans, who are gay Republicans. Charles, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Gil, thanks so much for having me on.
Well, this isn't the first one of these stories. It's not going to be the last.
Certainly not.
But is it hypocrisy?
You know, more than anything, it's inauthenticity. How many times have we heard politicians saying one thing and then doing another, not really knowing where the motivating factors are on the decisions they're making? I certainly don't want to call into question the validity of Senator Ashburn's personal statement, but he really didn't have a problem going against his district's wishes when he voted for the tax increases in Governor Schwarzenegger's budget last year. Putting that, not doing what his district wanted there, but then using, supporting Prop 8 and voting against all these pro-equality issues, citing that was what his district wanted to do. Politicians do it both ways, and they, the sword cuts both ways in this regard. But I think the poignant issue here that we have to understand is the culture of inauthenticity, the culture of hiding these personal details in politics. Even though this is the 21st century and the gay and lesbian movement, and the fight for equality is probably the strongest that it's ever been, at the same time, in politics, for some reason, there is this consistent fear about being who you are, about being authentic with yourself and those around you, about being open if you are homosexual. It occurs with the Democrats. It occurs with the Republicans. Yep. It cuts across the board. And I think this is just one more example of how this culture has developed in politics about being so concerned about your image and what people think of you and what image you present to your constituents. And it is continually having a detrimental effect on the strength of political discourse in this country.
Since you've seen these stories before, Charles, here's what I don't get. I get a guy who's completely closeted. It's not a way I would want to live, but look, I'm not in those shoes, so I can't say what I would do.
Right.
But here's a guy. There have been people who have been completely closeted, and then it comes out some way, and that's one thing. Here's a guy who apparently has been going to gay bars for years.
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand. It's like he's kind of keeping it a secret. He's voting against all these gay issues, but there he is using his own name. If you're around Sacramento, he's going to get recognized.
Right.
It's not like there's no gay staff members and things that go to bars. So that's the kind of thing I don't quite get where his head was.
Gil, welcome to politics. This is the culture that exists. You've got politicians making backroom deals. You've got, people who supposedly stand for one issue and are found on the weekend cavorting and taking money and doing events with people on the other side. It really is this, especially with the issue of homosexuality and your sexual orientation, it really is this culture and the fear that you can live one way yet vote another way and have this public persona that is completely opposite of who you truly are. And I think that's what really irritates the people out there is this lack of being honest with your voters, of being honest with yourself, of being honest with your family. We talk so much about the corruption and the lack of any kind of morality in politics whatsoever, and this is an extension of this. And especially when it comes to the sexuality issues, because of that culture that you have to be closeted in politics, so many politicians feel that the way that they're going to try to continue to hide their sexual orientation is by voting against pro-gay legislation. And it's totally incorrect because all it does is dial up the heat. But so many of these people, when they're in that position where they're trying to hide this about themselves, they feel like, if I just vote against these pro-gay measures, nobody's going to suspect me for being gay.
Well, I think it's
demented.
I think it's also, though, that they feel, look, if I vote for and if I were to come out, and this isn't true everywhere, there's been a couple of conservatives that have come out as gay and have gone on with their lives.
Absolutely.
But I suppose the feeling is that, look, if I do this, I'm not going to get renominated in the California Republican Party. It's just not a happening thing. This is such a hot button issue with so many people. When somebody has heterosexual affairs, it doesn't tend to bring up the hypocrisy. It brings up the hypocrisy thing, but people are more forgiving, not only because you don't have a lot of prejudice against heterosexuals, but also you're not voting on a lot of bills about heterosexuals, where there are a lot of bills about gay rights right now. So the hypocrisy thing comes down to actual votes.
Right. And again, it all goes down to these politicians who are in this self-preservation mode of trying to, push legislation that reinforces their own identity of being in the closet. They try to blanket themselves with this, quote, anti-gay agenda, hoping it's going to insulate them from rumors and innuendos. But we can see, if they're going out and gallivanting at gay bars on the weekend, they're really not doing much. And I can guarantee you he's not the only one. There are other people nationally who are doing this too, and it's just a matter of time. And we've got to eliminate this negative stigma that exists in politics where you have to act one way and then have your public persona be another.
Okay, but just summing up, because I've got to go to traffic, I want to let our listeners in on this. The main question I was going to ask my listeners about whether they buy his line that, look, I feel my duty and I still feel this way, and that's, by the way, the I is Ashburn talking, not me. I'm quoting him today in his interview, I felt my duty and I still feel this way is to represent my constituents rather than, what would do well for him. And you're saying, look, since he voted for tax increases and his constituents didn't like that, that's not going to wash.
Well, if he can come up with whatever example he wants, he's the person who's involved in this, not me. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. But if he's going to come up and consistently find excuses not to provide the same equality issues, the same equality rights and privileges to all Californians instead of just heterosexual Californians, then he's going to have to come up with a better excuse than that because it doesn't hold any water.
Okay, Charles, I thank you for being with us.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Charles Moran, national spokesman for Log Cabin Republicans.